The old order changes in rural England. The shadow of the industrial town falls across the countryside. Today, the immemorial labours of ploughing and sowing and reaping are performed by machines. The farmer is turning more and more to scientific methods of production, intensive cultivation of crops, and centralised systems of marketing. More and more he is depending for his livelihood on market gardening, on cattle, on dairy produce, foods whose value is practically doubled if they can be delivered to the consumer fresh. The English village used to be a small self-contained economic unit. All through historical times, the village had a strict social organisation of its own, headed by the squire. Affairs outside the village were a mystery, and affairs inside were nobody else's business. But nowadays, things are different. The wider world starts breaking in everywhere. The village authority still lights the streets and repairs the footpaths, but in high matters of state, the county council steps in and imposes a single pattern on the whole countryside. Modern transport has done a great deal to enlarge the scope of village life. The last 10 years or so have seen the development of a countrywide system of buses. They cruise through the most isolated villages, carrying the young people off to work in the towns and the women to the shops or cinemas. Vans from the large town stores deliver right to the cottager's door, and they bring goods from the remotest countries of the world. Mail from any part of England reaches the village post office within 24 hours. Outings and excursions by automobile often take the place of Sunday walks in the country lanes. There's hardly a thatched cottage that hasn't got its radio, and old as well as new cottages are wired for electricity. Telephones connect Land's End with John O'Groats, and over 13,000 public call boxes have been put up in rural areas. The young people working in the towns acquire the townsman's outlook and his standards of life. They demand new houses and modern comforts, a white-tiled bathroom with running water instead of the garden well. Community halls are also being built to attract social activities back to the village. The English village is traditionally built round a central patch of grassland, the village green. This is where village life is seen at its best. The butcher and the baker and so on all have their shops on the fringe of the green. Competing with the express delivery services from the towns, they have to be much more efficient and alive to progress than their forefathers were. Perhaps there are the old stocks, a very popular form of punishment in the old days. The children nowadays have much more to live for. It's 60 years since compulsory education took away from village parents the responsibility of deciding whether schooling was good for their children or not. It's more than 30 years since county councils were empowered by law to provide free education right through from the village school to the university. All the world now lies before the boy or girl who crosses the threshold of the little local schoolroom. Meanwhile, in the public house, familiarly and affectionately called the pub by all classes of Englishmen, these sweeping changes in village life have been gravely debated by the oldest inhabitants, who have haunted the porch and bar parlour year in and year out and exchanged their ripe social wisdom. The pub is the one great village institution which has never declined in popularity. And there is something about a pint of English bitter and a pipeful of tobacco which encourages a man to air his opinions upon the problems of the day. The older villagers have lived through these great social changes and argued out every stage of the process. Would the buses keep people awake at night? Would the telephone poles ruin the view? Today, the argument is about some of the old cottages which the county council have condemned as being beyond repair.
What do you think about them tearing these old houses down?
I don't like it at all, Fred.
No, I'm 73, you're 76. They've always suited us all right. And if they pull them down, they'll never build no more up to suit our pocket.
No, they won't.
So therefore, if we got in them, we should never pay the rent. The house that I live in is 400 year old, and I pay the squire 3 shillings a week, and it suits me all right. I got a radio and a gramophone, and I haven't got a bath, but I got a river down at the bottom of the garden, so I can have a good bath there when I want one. boys had a better time in the village than what they did when I was a boy. I used to go to walk mile and a half to work, get 1 and 6 a week, frighten crows off the parson's field. And my father only got 10 shillings to keep 5 of them.
In the old days, the squire was the fountainhead of authority in the village. He enforced the law, patronised education, and probably purchased himself a seat in Parliament. The villagers were completely dependent on the squire for their livelihood. But today, the youth of the village looks for work in the big industrial towns. The landed estates, too, are slowly disappearing. Some have been sold to farmers, some have been used for building purposes, and some have become national property. The squire often lends his grounds for the village show or fete, an annual affair in most villages since the 15th century. The church has always been the landmark of an English village. There are over 12,000 ancient churches in England. Once a year, the villagers decorate the church for the harvest festival. Every evening, after the men finish their work, they go to the pub to discuss the day's events over a pint of beer and a game of darts or shove-hay.
Well, what it is now. Yeah, that's right, I get
Don't just take your map and walk around. Find one of the old inhabitants and spend a while talking to him. You will find out more about the village this way. You will hear of the village green, its old cottages, and of those who have lived in them. And of the last old miller who worked the mill. From the old man's conversation, you will find that the village will come to life. The appeal of the relics of bygone days, of ancient buildings with all their historical associations, will be increased by the insight you will get into the life of the village as it is today. For it is the villagers who are the village. It is the people, not the streets and buildings, which really make the village different from the town. The villagers are interested in each other and in the affairs of the village. They are more active in their interests as a community than is the townsman. The village hall is the centre where they make their own amusement. Fathers and mothers grew up in the village together. Their children go to the same village school, and there form the friendships which will last through life. But when they leave school, their future is wider than was their father's. They will not go to the mill to work, for its useful days are over, and the village miller is no more. Mastery of the scythe will not be theirs, for this is yet another skill that is passing with the years. The thatcher has no apprentice, The thatched roofs grow fewer as the years go by. The village blacksmith carries on his ancient trade. Hand-wrought iron is still needed for the agricultural machinery, but there is no bellows boy to learn by using hand and eye the time-honoured skill. The curiosities in woven straw, relics of harvest festival, which come from the quick fingers of the dolly maker, are already antiques at the time of their creation. But, as the old man talks, we shall hear not only of places and people, but of the land and its crops, and how the old skill in crafts is being replaced by the new skill in machines. The countryside and farming have not stood still. Youth does not follow the old traditions, but is taking readily to the mechanization of the land. Some of the villagers find employment in agricultural engineering, which may involve the repair of anything from a large thrashing machine to the ordinary garden shears. The village grew up around the river crossing and became the meeting place of roads. Cars now pass over the village bridge as the old stagecoach once did, for roads have not only vastly improved, but have multiplied, so that the villagers no longer live in comparative isolation, but can easily get to the towns. All that remains of the tracks along which their ancestors walked or rode on horseback are the footpaths, preserved as short cuts across the fields. And now the time comes to take leave of the old man and make your way back home. As you pass the inn and perhaps greet the innkeeper, look at the sign, which may embody a little piece of English tradition, as does this one. Its man in green tells of spring merrymaking, of village jollity, and days of happy festival.